The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nick Fantasy. Sign the promo code SGPN to score up to $1,000 bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgambling.com, rhythmsportsgambling.com, RITHMM. And a reminder, make sure to enter the free roll football contest for up to $3,500 in prizes up for grabs. A reminder, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/free roll to enter today. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/free roll. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Tuesday morning, roughly 1:20 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. The first of two episodes that are coming out this morning. So we're going to have another episode in a couple hours after this for the men's quarterfinals. But this is the women's quarterfinal episode. I mentioned in the last episode that I was going to try to include the women's quarters for the U.S. Open. So here we are to get into the four matches on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, for the actual game plan, going to go through all the matches in a second. Do want to remind you once again, though, that we are going to do some usual recap stuff. Not going to cover the men's round of 16 matches. Going to save the overall breakdown for those in the men's episode. But I am going to cover the women's round of 16 episodes just for the sake of the recap. However, got to take care of some housekeeping first. Want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. A reminder also, if you're still listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, don't forget you can rate the podcast to leave some feedback. So I recommend you doing so to show some support. But for subscribes, I believe we're now over 520. So hopefully we'll get close to 600. Saw the view count was pretty good for the last episode. So thank you if you ended up enjoying the content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to leave a comment or even join the live stream. If you do want to interact live, it's going to be available on this channel. And you can also find it on Twitter on the regular SGPN Twitter. Anyway, point as a reminder, besides liking and subscribing, check out the merch store. We have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs, and all high quality, all affordable. Recommend getting yourself something there. And a reminder that there are also a lot of football picks that are happening because the NFL starts in about 2 days because you have Thursday Night Football between the Chiefs and the Ravens. Should be fun. And a reminder that the Sports Camp Podcast is back picking every NFL game, ATS, like they've done since 2011. Plus a reminder, check out the free roll football contest. Up to $3,500 in cash up for grabs. Sign up at sportscampodcast.com/free roll, sportscampodcast.com/free roll. Anyway, time to get into the actual recap of what happened in the lock and dog picks. Once again, not going to spend too much time with the lock and dog recap because I'm going to save the actual match recaps for the next episode. Ended up splitting basically the same thing as the episode prior. The lock did not work out, but the dog ended up winning. For the lock, not even close. We had the over 3.5 sets in the Draper and Makic match, as you ended up seeing Makic get curb stomped. Really an awful showing by him. I couldn't tell if he was injured or not, or if he just decided waking up that morning, I feel like going home. And he proceeded to immediately do basically nothing for the entire match. He got absolutely destroyed. He looked like a qualifier or like a challenger level player. He was awful. I can't even say Draper looked that great. Draper played fine. Makic just couldn't hit a shot in play, and it just felt like he couldn't really construct points. But Makic, I don't know what happened to him. After killing Goffin in the previous round and really just coasting up to this match, he completely no-showed. Maybe the moment was too big for him and nerves got the better of him. But in the round of 16, he no-showed and Draper got the job done. Even crazier because Makic was 3-0 lifetime against Draper. And Draper killed him. So not even close there. For the dog, though, nice win. Wasn't easy. We'd Sinner in straight sets, though, at plus 125. Both the first two sets went to breakers. In fact, Sinner was down a double break as he couldn't hit a forehand for the first 20 minutes of the match. He was down 4-1. Then he came back and eventually did win the first set via breaker. Same thing in the second set, except they just held the entire time. Had a couple of set points, though. Couldn't convert, and then eventually got the job done in the breaker, courtesy of Paul really butchering a couple of really easy second serves. Just seemed like Paul had a very good opportunity to get some good returns in, and he had 2 unforced errors. Then Sinner ended up eventually getting the mini break to win the second set. And then once that happened, you knew the match was over, and Paul immediately rolled over and died, as you ended up seeing Sinner win 6-1 in the final set. So nice winner there at plus 125. So once again, basically broke even. Look for a better episode in this one and for the men's quarterfinals coming up in a few hours. Anyway, time to get into the actual preview of the round of 16 matches. Recapping the round of 16 matches. So getting into the actual recap. For this one, you had kind of a mixed bag between competitive and straightforward matches here. Badoza beat Wong pretty convincingly, 6-1, 6-2, after having the very competitive matchup against Ruse, as that ended up going to a final set breaker. Badoza, though, won comfortably. You saw Navarro beat Goff again in a Grand Slam, saw her win in Wimbledon, and you ended up seeing her beat Goff again. Good for us, because we have Badoza and we have Navarro to win the quarter. So I automatically win in that quarter for the outright. But you ended up seeing Goff have probably the worst serving display of the entire tournament, men's or women's. Joker had the, I'd say, trophy for about a day or two, as he had 14 double faults in that loss to Papirin. Then Goff said, hold my beer, and had 19 double faults in 3 sets. 19. Now, Joker at least went to 4 sets. There's at least an added, set in there to accumulate double faults. 2 aces and 19 double faults in a 2 out of 3 set match is disgusting, especially as the defending champion. 46% first serve. It was just a mess. And Navarro got the job done, as she probably should have won in straight sets if she was up a break in the second, but got the job done there in 3. Sabalenka got the job done against Mertens, as she won comfortably, and ended up seeing Zhang win a marathon against Vekic. Fun match. I believe it was the latest ending match in U.S. Open women's history. Point is, though, 2 hours and 50, fun match in general, but Vekic ended up falling short as Zhang got the job done. Fun rematch of the Australian Open final coming up in that quarter between Zhang and Sabalenka. Reminder, we have Sabalenka to win the quarter in that one. For the other matches, though, that took place on Monday, so those are the Sunday matches. These were the Monday ones. So you had Mukova ended up beating Paolini. Paolini we had as an outright. Didn't work out. Mukova was just really, really good. No way around it. Pegula got the job done against Schneider, as she won 6-2, 6-4, 6-2. It's pretty straightforward. Fun match, though, between Haddad Maia and Wozniacki of whose serve could suck less. And Haddad Maia won, as she eventually won in the third 6-3. And Swiatek got the job done against Samsonova 6-4, 6-1. So to go through the actual outrights once again, as a reminder, just to show you what stake we have already, for the quarterfinal matches here. For the actual outrights, for the first quarter, we had Swiatek at 115, at plus 115, and Pegula at plus 460. That is an auto winner, so definitely a good sign for us. Second quarter did not work out, as we ended up having Paolini. We had Kalinskaya, and we had Fernandez. That did not work out. Swing and a miss there for the second quarter. Third quarter, though, we had an auto win, and it's a good price. We had Badoza at 6-1, and we had Navarro at 7-1. We faded Goff. We didn't trust her, and we didn't like her form, and that worked out well, as we were going to be picking up a pretty decent plus money play, no matter who wins the quarterfinal matchup between Badoza and Navarro. For the fourth quarter, we have Sabalenka and Vekic. Vekic, of course, lost, so we almost had an auto win there, but didn't work out. But we have Sabalenka at minus 150. As for the outrights to win the event, so far, can't complain. We have Sabalenka at 250, Swiatek at 370. Did lose Paolini, did lose Vekic at 125-1, but we do have Badoza at 6-1. So we have 3 out of the 5 outrights left. So can't complain too much. Almost half the field, but we do have the 2 consensus favorites to win the event, and we have the long shot there with Badoza. So can't complain. Pretty good outrights for us there on the women's event. Hopefully we end up seeing some of them end up cashing on either Tuesday, Wednesday, or even the entire event. Anyway, time to get into the actual preview of the upcoming matches in the quarters. But before we get into that, remember once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because Underdog Fantasy has a pick'em, and a reminder that if you try out the pick'em, you can win up to 1,000 times your entry. The NFL's back. There are a ton of pick'em specials to get you started, and a reminder that you can use specials and boost on Underflux entries. I'll probably end up doing a Rashee Rice higher receiving yards with Hollywood Brown being out. Do you think that he's going to be in line for a good game? Should probably have been suspended or maybe even been in jail, but they decided not to punish him because it's the NFL. So either way, I think he'll play well in this one. A reminder, though, check out the Underdog Fantasy platform and sign up the promo code SGPN. Claim your special pick and your first time deposit offer up to $1,000 bonus cash on Fantasy, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened in the round of 16 for the Women's U.S. Open. Time to get into the actual matches for Tuesday and for Wednesday. Starting off with the 2 matches on Tuesday. First match is between Badoza and Navarro. Badoza's minus 125 and Navarro's plus 105 for the actual spread. Minus 1.5 Badoza, plus 1.5 for Navarro. Over-under in games is set at 22.5. For the over-under in sets, you have around 2.5 sets plus 130, give or take. For the actual set spread here, you have Badoza minus 1.5 sets at plus 195. You have Navarro at minus 1.5 sets at plus 265. If you want the under 2.5 sets, by the way, you can get that at minus 150. Now, for that, Ted, they faced off one time this year. The only head-to-head meeting faced off on clay. It was in Rome, but you ended up seeing Badoza win in 3. So the only head-to-head meeting did go 3. It was back in May, but still it's the only thing we have to go with in terms of head-to-head history. For the event, a pretty solid showing by both players. Navarro did go to 3 sets against Goff and against Kostyuk, but got the job done there. Then ended up beating Rus in straight sets, 6-1, 6-1, and beat Blinkova 6-1, 6-1. Dan Blinkova's been terrible since beating Rybakina in the Australian Open. Anyway, Badoza, though, has been pretty solid. She's won every match in straight sets except for the Ruse match, which actually fought off a match point or two in the third set. So point was a very, very competitive matchup. In fact, you ended up seeing Ruse have a match point, and you ended up seeing a pretty choke-filled ending because you ended up seeing Badoza serve for the match. Then she choked it, and then you ended up seeing her hold on to win the breaker 10-8. So Badoza's been good for the most part, and she has been in great form this entire summer, basically, as she did win a title a couple weeks ago. For this matchup, though, I do think I'm going to go with Badoza to get the job done. We picked her to win the quarter. Same thing with Navarro, but we also have Badoza to win the event. So I am kind of biased, but I think that she's in better form right now than Navarro. I do think that Navarro, even though she has been good in the event, has gone to 3 sets back-to-back times, and Goff really handed the match over on a platter because she could not serve, but Navarro got a bit tight there at the end. It seemed like she was kind of nervous, and I do think that if history is going to repeat itself, we did see Navarro in Wimbledon pull off the upset against Goff, and people immediately thought she was a serious threat to win the event, and then immediately she got embarrassed, and she rolled over right after because she ended up beating Goff 6-4, 6-3, and then Paolini beat her 6-2, 6-1. So Navarro, we've seen this exact script before, where she's able to pull off the upset, particularly against Goff, and then the match after, as soon as the expectations are there, she has a letdown. Don't want to compare it to like the Zanshop loss to Draper after beating Alcaraz, but you get my point. You tend to see some players, like the Pyron, for example, you pull off the upset of the tournament, arguably, and then suddenly you see the player roll over and immediately fall back down to earth and lose in the next matchup. But I think that Badoza is right now in better form with her winning a title during the summer, and I do think that the price is pretty interesting, that Navarro is the higher-ranked player, but Badoza's favored. I agree with it. I'll give me Badoza in this one at minus 125, but I think it's going to be close. Give me the over 2.5 sets as well. I see a very close matchup, possibly a marathon, but I think there's value at plus 130. Give me the over in sets in that one. Moving on to the next match, arguably the match of the round. You could argue it's either this or Swiatek and Pegula based on overall just ranking. So you have Sabalenka, who is ranked number 2 in the world. Again, Zhang is ranked number 7. Zhang, a reminder, did win the Olympic gold medal in the French Open. So congrats I should say in Roland Garros, not the French Open, but the point is she has been in good form this year, making the Aussie Open final as well, while losing to Sabalenka in the final. For the price, though, massive favorite here. Sabalenka is minus 340. Zhang is plus 280. For the game spread, minus 4.5 for Sabalenka, plus 4.5 for Zhang. The over-under in games is 20.5. The over is minus 120. The under is even money. For the actual set spread here, you have Sabalenka in straight sets at minus 130. Zhang in, at least to win a set, is plus 100. The over 2.5 sets is plus 170. Now, they faced off, as I said before, in the Aussie Open final. And you saw Sabalenka win 6-3, 6-2. Because of last year in the U.S. Open, though, and Sabalenka did win 6-1, 6-4. Now, Zhang was really bad early in the event, as she ended up having a couple of close calls. Ended up beating Anisimova in the first round. Really tough draw, though, in the first round. Anisimova's been healthy recently, and she has been good. So a good win there, then beat Andreeva, not the good one, the bad one, in 3 sets. Then ended up beating Niemeyer, and ended up beating Vekic, but she has dropped at least 1 set in 3 of the 4 matches, so point is definitely not as dominant, but a win's a win, and you take it. As for Sabalenka, she's been coasting for the most part. Did drop the first set against Alexandrova, but then killed her, only dropping 3 games in the final 2 sets combined. Only set she's dropped. Beat Hahn in straight sets, beat Bronzetti in straight sets, and beat Mertens in straight sets in the round of 16. So we saw her win Cincinnati. She's been in great form. In fact, she's won in straight sets in this current winning streak that she's on in 8 of her last 9 matches, so she's been coasting. I think Sabalenka is going to win. I gave her out to win the quarter at a minus price for a reason. I think that she is definitely poised to have a great tournament, and I think that her game translates well to the courts here. A reminder that she ended up losing to Goff in the final. It's a bit of unfinished business here, but I do think you're looking at Zhang, who should be competitive in this matchup. I'm not saying she's going to get her ass kicked, but I do think Sabalenka is just a little bit too solid, and I do think that Sabalenka's serve is really going to be the factor here. Zhang's serve can be a bit underwhelming at times, and I do think that Sabalenka should be able to generate some breakpoint chances, at least more than what Zhang should generate. So I'm going to go with Sabalenka to win the match. The question is, what value play do I like? Because minus 340 is a bit steep for me. I think if I had to actually go for a prop here, I would consider maybe Sabalenka team total over 12.5 games, maybe if you're expecting a breaker, but I think Sabalenka is going to win. Do I think Zhang can win a set? Maybe, but I think probably not. I think this is a pretty, if I had to guess, standard like 6-4, like I'd say 6-3, 7-6 match. If I had to guess, I think the spread will be close. I think that the total will be close. I'll lean to the over though, and I'll lean to the team total over for Sabalenka. But I think she's going to win. Zhang's still a good player. You can't underestimate her. But I do think Sabalenka will be the sharper player. Maybe you see her stumble out of the gates and Zhang wins a set and then you end up having a marathon. It is possible. There's a couple ways to get there for the team total over 12.5 for Sabalenka, but I think she wins. Give me that as my main opinion for that match. Moving on to the matches on Wednesday. You have Haddad Maia taking on the Mukova, which is probably the worst match out of the four. No offense, but it probably is if I just had to go power ranking the matchups. For this one, though, you have Mukova as a decent favorite. Mukova is around minus 220. Haddad Maia is about plus 190 for the game spread, minus 3.5 for Mukova, plus 3.5 for Haddad Maia. The over-under is 22.5 games or 21.5 if you want to shop around. For the set spread here, you have a straight sets win for Mukova at plus 120. You have Haddad Maia to win a set is minus 150, and you have the over 2.5 sets is plus 135. Now, Mukova's been incredible. Good for her. She's had some injuries, but she's been really good for the last year. So happy to see her healthy and really dominating over the last couple of weeks. Now, Mukova has not dropped a set yet. In fact, she only had one competitive set, and it was against Osaka. But she's been coasting in every other set. Beat Paolini comfortably 6-3, 6-3. Beat Potapova in straight sets. Beat Osaka in straight sets. And beat Volinets in straight sets. As for Haddad Maia, she was kind of coasting as she ended up winning the last two matches in straight sets. But she did have a marathon against Wozniacki, and she had a bit of a struggle in the first set. But in the first round, I mean. But ended up beating Kalinskaya and ended up beating Sarabis Torres, who I don't think is any good, but still won 6-2, 6-1. Point is, or Tormo, I mean, not Torres. Sorabis Tormo. Sorry. I don't think she's very good on hard court anyway. So Haddad Maia, you could argue, hasn't really played anybody based on the path. Wozniacki, we know, is fine, but she's past her prime, just being honest. And you are looking at Kalinskaya. That's a pretty good win there, 6-3, 6-1. Besides that, though, I'm looking at the path for Mukova. It's been harder. I think that Osaka is overrated, but she's still a pretty solid player. I think that she's mispriced in every event she's in, but that's still a good straight sets win. Volinets is decent as well, but beating Paolini 6-3, 6-3 is a good showing there. Mukova, those 3-0 in the head-to-head. Faced off in Cincinnati last year. Mukova won in 3. Faced off in Ostrava in 2022, and Mukova won in straight sets. Faced off on clay in 2016. Very dated, but Mukova did win in straight sets. So the point is Mukova has won 6 of the 7 career sets between them. So I do think that you're looking at a pretty good matchup for her. At the end of the day, I think the main weakness for Haddad Maia is the second serve, which is awful. Like, the second serve is going to be low 70s. It looks like a Jamie Moyer curveball. Point is, I do think that you're going to see a lot of breakpoint chances for Mukova in this matchup. And Haddad Maia, we know that she can get off to good starts. We saw it in the last event before the U.S. Open. She tends to implode if things don't go well in the second set for her. And we saw her actually fight off that trend by beating Wozniacki in the third set on Monday. But for example, we saw in the final against Kessler in Cleveland, she won the first set 6-1 and then immediately fell apart. So I do think that you're looking at consistency being in favor of Mukova. Haddad Maia, though, really not a great server, and Mukova's been serving pretty well so far into the event. So for me, I'm going to go with Mukova in this one. I think that she's looked like one of the best players in the event, and we know what the upside can be. Mukova, as far as I'm concerned, if she's healthy, is a top 10 player. I think she's actually that good. It might sound like a hot take at first glance, but when you actually think about it, Mukova's been really good for the last year and a half, and I do think that she is poised to potentially be a potential dark horse candidate to win this event. So give me Mukova to get the job done in this one. For the last match, though, Saving the best for last, you have Swiatek taking on Pegula. You have 1 versus 6. Probably the match of the round. So you have Swiatek, who's a pretty decent favorite here. Swiatek is minus 350, but she's usually like minus 1,000, so I guess that counts for something. Pegula's plus 280. For the over-under, you have 20.5 at minus 130. You have, on the over, you have the spread here, minus 4.5 for Swiatek, plus 4.5 for Pegula. For the set spread, you have minus 1.5 for Swiatek, plus 1.5 for Pegula. For the over-under in sets, the over 2.5 sets is plus 155. The under is minus 185. Now, the head-to-head's been close. It is 6-3 in favor of Swiatek, but if you look at the last couple of matchups, it has actually been close. Faced off last year in the WTA finals, which was an absolute curb stomping. Swiatek won 6-1, 6-0. However, Pegula did beat her in Montreal the meeting prior. Faced off in Doha, Swiatek won 6-3, 6-0. Faced off in the United Cup last January in 2023, and Pegula did win that one in straight sets. So they have split the last 4 meetings, which tells me that Pegula is starting to potentially, I don't want to say figure it out against Swiatek, but she has been a threat. However, the problem is Swiatek has dominated 2 of those meetings. So it's tough to tell if you like the over in sets or the under, because Pegula has been either getting killed or even winning in straight sets occasionally, like she did in the United Cup a year ago. So I think for this matchup, based on how the tournament has progressed, it is a pretty important match for Pegula because she is on the verge of making her first ever Grand Slam semi. So nerves could play a factor. Facing off against the number 1 player in the world is not going to help matters. Now, Swiatek has been good in the event, has won every set. Bit of a sweat, though. She probably should have lost the first set to the qualifier, or the lucky loser, as she ended up winning 8-6 in the breaker. But she fought off a couple of set points there against Rakimova, as she actually was fighting off. I'm trying to remember the exact script here. So she was down 6-3 in the tiebreak and then came back and won the final 5 points. So she was getting destroyed in that breaker, then came back. So she probably should have dropped the set in that one. But since then, it's been pretty comfortable for her, as she has won every set 6-4 or by greater margin than that. Pegula has been in the same boat. Did beat Kenin in a tiebreak in the first set of the second round, but mostly been coasting in the event. So I think for this matchup, I am going to lean to the dog plus the games. I think that Swiatek's going to win, but I think 4.5 games is pretty steep here. I'll lean to Pegula. I think she can win a set here. I'm not going to tell you that Swiatek's going to kill her. If that happened, I'd be shocked. No. But I think that Pegula can keep it close. We have seen the head-to-head tied 2-2 in the last year or so. The matchups have been, once again, kind of up in the air, and I do think with that being the case, that Swiatek should be the favorite, but I do think that the cheapness of the favorite price at $350 for her standards. $350 is massive for most of the players on tour, but for Swiatek, I can understand it. But her serve isn't always dominant. It's been very good in the event. But we know that it can be a little bit underwhelming at times. I think Pegula can break a couple of times in this matchup, so I am going to go with the over as well. I think you're looking at what should be in my opinion, a 3-set match, but for safety purposes, I'll lean to the games plus 4.5. Probably not going to bet it. Should be fun, though. Don't mind the games here for Pegula. I really just can't lay 4.5 when Pegula has been in great form for the entire summer. A reminder of what Pegula did for the course of the summer. She was in great form. So we know that she ended up winning every match so far in the U.S. Open in straight sets. Made the final in Cincinnati, lost to Sabalenka is what it is, but she ended up making a deep run there. And she won the title in Toronto. So she almost won back-to-back 1,000 titles on hard court. So I do think that she's in great form, and I'm not going to ignore it. Give me the dog here plus the games to keep it close and to lose, I'd say, respectably in this matchup. Shout out to who, by the way, joining in, telling me that I know my tennis. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad you got the cash. Happy to help. Anyway, time to get into the actual lock and dog picks for the show. Before we get into the actual lock and dog picks, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because they can help you with college football betting or the NFL, because they have models that can either help you with your picks, or you can build your own if you want to try to experiment and try something new. But they do have a lot of betting models that can definitely help you get feedback and overall, I'd say, projections for games. They can give you predictions on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. You build your own, or you could copy one of the top performing models on the leaderboards. They have a leaderboard, so you can just follow those if you want. But the point is, you can give Rhythm a chance to help you with predictions, and a reminder that they did have a nice, easy winner there in college football with the Colorado and North Dakota State under. 59.5, which was pretty fun in terms of games. And shout out to Dion for some of the worst clock management imaginable. That game did go under. It was close, but it ended up landing 57. Point is, though, game did go under. So a reminder that Rhythm does have solid plays on totals as well. Claim your free trial, though, 7-day free trial by going to sportsgames.com, Rhythm, sportsgames.com, RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Game Time, because Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of the MLB, which can help you get tickets faster and easier, and price on the app actually go down closer to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all in prices used from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and my favorite feature is the image of seat views, which helps show you the preview of the seat you would actually be getting before you spend your money, so you know the exact view you're going to be getting, and you don't have to worry about any obstructions or pulls in your line of view. I'm sure this happened to you. You bought a seat. You like the idea of going to a game. The seat sucks and it ruins your entire experience. Really a bad overall feeling. Make sure it doesn't happen with Game Time. A reminder, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code SGPN for $20 off for your first purchase. Again, terms apply again, create an account, and redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Lots of tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the women's quarterfinal matches for the US Open. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Starting off, for the lock, I am going to go back to the first match on Wednesday. I am going to go with Mukova, minus 2.5 games, minus 138. Couple reasons why. First reason, she's been dominant against good competition. Osaka, I've roasted on the show because I don't think she's nearly as good as she used to be, and the odds are insane. She's being priced like Nadal's been priced this year on the men's side, and Nadal hasn't really been close. Made the final in Bastad, ended up losing anyway. You get my point. Books are begging you to take Osaka, and the prices are horrible anyway. But the point is, she's still a pretty respectable hardcore player, and Mukova beat her in straight sets. Paolini did make the final in Wimbledon and the French Open. Maybe not the best hardcore player, but the point is still a nice straight sets win nonetheless. Against good competition, Haddad Maia hasn't really faced off against many tough players so far. So a bit of a step up there for Haddad Maia. Plus, her serve is really underwhelming. And I do think that Mukova is very aggressive. We saw her actually use a bit of saber, stole something from Federer in her last match. And I think that she might be able to use the same strategy of standing very close to the actual serve box, trying to get into the net quickly and using her underrated volley skills. But I do think you're looking at a spot where Mukova's the better player. She's 3-0 in the head-to-head. And Haddad Maia's serve, I think, will be a serious problem for her as the match progresses. But you're looking at her winning 6 of the 7 career sets, and she has covered the spread in every meeting, including the one match she lost a set in Cincinnati last year. Did win the second set 6-1 and the third set 6-4. So she ended up covering that anyway. But Haddad Maia, to go through the actual serve numbers, for example, against Wozniacki, just read off one match in particular. She ended up winning 70% of the first serve points, and she ended up winning 38% of the second serve points, but she had to fight off a bunch of break points. She ended up having to deal with 16 break points, and she fought off 13 of them. But Wozniacki ended up having 16 break points. Haddad Maia had 8, but Haddad Maia broke 5 times, and Wozniacki broke 3. So the real story was Wozniacki just unable to actually close out break points. And I think that if the opportunities are going to be there for Mukova, I have more faith in order to actually capitalize on those chances. So give me Mukova to get the job done in a pretty convincing fashion. Give me the minus 2.5 sets at minus 138 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to the Badoza and Navarro match, and I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets at plus 135 on Caesars. So Navarro has dropped at least 1 set in 7 of her last 9 matches, so she has been kind of prone to some, I'd say, lapses, whether it was physical or mental, in sets. And as a result, I do think that bodes well for Badoza's chances of winning at least 1 set in this matchup. Now, the face-off this year was on clay in Rome in May, but the match went to 3. That's all I got. It was on clay, but the point is the matchup was competitive, and I do think you're going to see a similar story here. Both players, though, love to rally behind the baseline. I see a pretty standard long rally slugfest where both players should be really just trying to outlast each other in these 20, 30 shot rallies. So I am going to go with what I think should be a fun matchup and a matchup that should be full of ebbs and flows. I think Badoza is going to win, but it's not going to be easy. And of course, the crowd's going to support Navarro anyway because she's American. So I am going to go with the expected marathon here. Give me the over 2.5 sets as my dog at plus 135. So once again, the picks for the women's quarterfinal matches, the lock's going to be on Mukova, minus 2.5 games, minus 138. The dog's going to be on Badoza and Navarro, over 2.5 sets at plus 135. A reminder back once again later tonight, or this morning, I should say, probably in like an hour or two. I got to do the research for it. But we're going to cover the men's quarterfinals. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the MLB show and the WTA show and the NBA show when the season does resume. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.